Otep, everybody. It's Brother Beniti Atom Ray. We're back with another session today. What I kind of want to talk about and build on today is the day and time that we're living in, the importance of it, what it signifies, and kind of where we are in our spiritual evolution. I want to kind of start with the starting point of the whole thing that took place a couple of years ago with the 2012 phenomenon that was going on, what that really meant, the importance or the significance of that event leading up to kind of where we are currently right now, spiritually, mentally, and emotionally, and physically. Just what was the 2012 phenomenon? Well, let's establish this. Leading up to the 2012, what a lot of prophecies talked about, even if you go into biblical times, or you use the biblical prophecies, or you use the Egyptian prophecies, you use the Mayan prophecies, they all talked about a great change or a renewal. These great changes or renewals, which we know, for an example, when you go into the many different doctrines or cultures, the Nation of Islam talks about in their lessons that every 24,896 years, roughly rounded off to 25,000 years, which is an equinox, the truth circumference or makes a trip full circle around the planet. They say that the truth travels 1 mile per landmass, 24,896 miles, which is the circumference of the Earth. But that needs to be updated because the Earth is constantly contracting and expanding, so the circumference mathematically varies. That's another story. But it signifies a full cycle of 25,000 years, which we know as an equinox. Two 25,000-year periods, as we know, equals an epoch. Now, the day and time that we're living in is a day and time that our ancestors have prophesized many times in many sacred writings. We just happen to be living in that day and time to see the transformation or the changes actually occur. Now, thousands of years ago, when the ancestors, or our ancestors that were walking the earth, were living here talking about it, they were talking about this day. And we are in this day and time now. There's been a great awakening or a spiritual revitalization with the whole 2012 shift in consciousness. Now, we know when the earth shifted on its axis, coming with that was also a shift in mental and spiritual consciousness. And as I've addressed before, because especially at the time when this was a hot topic, you had the loony birds and the nutheads that were promoting this as some cataclysmic doomsday, because they didn't understand it. And sensationalism sells. And when you're talking about cataclysmic events, death and destruction, it gets people's attention, and people just are naturally drawn to it. And that's the plan of the deceivers, because that's what they want you to believe. Because, like I said in a previous session, that fear is that disease that keeps people controlled. Fear leads to ignorance. Not knowing leads to ignorance. So this great shift in spiritual consciousness, we're living in a day and time where we're seeing all the signs and the wonders around us. And this is not coming from a religious perspective, because though our religious people like to quote the Apocrypha, which in Greek means the hidden, which is, or they know today as the Book of Revelations, has nothing to do with the modern day Bible that's comprised. It's an apocryphy book, and we'll do a session on the whole origin of that Book of Revelations and dissecting the Bible. But we're living in a day and time where we're seeing the earth changes. And as I've said before, the key to steadying the course and making this transformation or transition is being able to change with nature as nature changes. Because if you can't change with nature, you will be tossed to the wayside. Mother Nature acts and moves on her own biological clock, and it stops for no one. And we have to establish that. So you can see the changes in nature, the changes that reflect in us. But what happens is, when conscious beings, or I should say unconscious beings, don't change in alignment with nature, bad things tend to happen. What I mean by that is we see in the day and time now, in the last several years, there's been an abundance of random shootings in schools, individuals going into workplaces, just going completely crazy, shooting people up. And they all have an eerie similarity because they all say, some of them say they heard a voice. Something got into their subconscious and told them to carry out this act. Now, I've mentioned many times to people in many classes I've done over the last 20 plus years. I talked about a lot of this stuff back in the early 90s, telling people that, you know, these sign of events would be a sign of a mental awakening on two levels, which you want to term positive and negative, and like I said, which is basically just two different varying degrees of vibration. As we approach this conscious era, and I explained, from a nature perspective and a scientific perspective, as our planet gets closer to the sun, this cosmic frequency or this energy is going to be more powerful and more strong. Those who have prepared themselves through meditation, proper diet, practicing healing techniques, practicing our magical systems for protection. For an example, let's use this for an example. A lot of us wear talismans and signs, symbols that might reflect the culture we gravitate towards. Native American culture, Indian culture, Egyptian culture. A lot of people don't realize your talismans have to be charged. So if you're wearing them and they're not charged with your energy, they hold no protection. And there are rituals in the Egyptian mystery systems that are done to charge your talismans. They're placed on an altar. They're purified by various different means, sage, incense, and certain invocations are recited over them. And then they are charged with your spiritual energy. And that's another hoax that goes on in dealing with this spirituality. You have a lot of people out there, and again, I just want to make this clear. Though those that may have never seen my face or don't know me, I'm not new to this. Let's establish that. I recently just got into this whole social media thing. I'm more of an old school person, interaction, face to face with people. But obviously times have changed, and you have to change with those times. So social media is the big thing, and it's a big way to reach people. So let me establish this. Like I said, I'm not into the pissing contest, getting debate, but I can have no problem addressing anything or anybody. The main goal is to get information out and awaken people. But I want to make this clear. I'm by no means, no shape or form, if you've never seen me, new to this. Okay? Been through various different mystery systems, been through the Masonic Lodge, walked through the Blue House, crossed the desert, into the shrine, made that transition, been initiated in the Rosicrucian schools of Kemetic mysteries, initiated in the Yoruba culture, studied many different things to get us to the point where we're at now. Those were just tools and stepping stones to get us to the point we're at now. Now, as I was saying about talismans and charging them up, and when it comes to spiritual cleansings or spiritual baths, if they're not charged with your energy, they hold no power. Okay? Unfortunately, when dealing with what we call Yoruba and Santeria, let's address that real quick. You have in that field, unfortunately, a lot of hustlers and a lot of people that create gimmicks, because it creates a system where you become dependent on having to do this cleansing, this bath. I need to do this ritual. There's always something where you're forking up money to do something, because whether you realize it consciously or not, you're giving the power and the life to that so-called ritual. Now, you don't come to the full understanding of that until you look within yourself and raise yourself up to that realization. So, I mean, we'll talk more about magic and rituals and cleansings, because that's an important part of our way of life that we need to be practicing. We should be taking consistent cleansing baths. We should be having the science and knowledge of certain herbs and mixing certain things to clean and purify ourselves. We should know the science and the significance in reference to the amulets, the charms, and the symbols we wear. Not just wear them because they look good and we look cool and we look cultural. If you don't know the significance and the energy behind them, because remember, symbols carry energy. Just the sight and the visual, when it touches the sight of the symbol, when it touches the optic nerve, which is a sense which ties into the five senses, has an effect from an energy perspective because it carries energy. You have to know how to channel that energy and make that energy work for you. So there's a reason why symbols play an important part in the various different ancient cultures going back to Egypt and Nubia. But you have to have the understanding of it, not just do it because it looks cool to do it. Unfortunately, a lot of us do that. So this day and time that we live in, let's discuss that. And again, in this day and time, like I was saying, dealing with Santeria and Yoruba, unfortunately, you have a lot of charlatans that are looking to drain you of your money, claiming they have a bath or a certain ritual that you need to do to cleanse you. Now, there's no doubt in my travels in dealing with Santeria / Yoruba, I've seen many things. I've seen bizarre things, or people would term bizarre because they or label it bizarre because they may not understand it. I've watched spirits come down, and I've watched the different effects these spirits have. So there's no doubt through those cultures you can channel spirits and energy. But the question is, do you really know what you're channeling? Have you really opened yourself up to the awareness of who and what it is? So you have to be cautious, because what tends to happen is if you open yourself up spiritually and you're not prepared mentally and emotionally to receive that energy, it's kind of like a computer. That computer can overload and go bad. This is what's happening in this day and time. I bring that up because when talking about, as I said earlier, as nature's changing, as we're getting closer to that sun that's emitting all of that energy, if we haven't prepared ourselves for the intake and assimilation of that energy, we get ourselves in serious problems. We start to hear voices. We start walk-ins, spiritual possession, because we're not prepared for the influx of the energy. That's what you're seeing going on in the news right now. People who spiritual psyche is not developed, they're open vessels to receive this energy. And that's why certain individuals are being targeted. We got to understand, we are living in a day and time of spiritual warfare and mental warfare. As the Bible says, that people like to quote, principalities in high places that you can't see. You're fighting things that you can't see with the physical eye, but if you train yourself spiritually and mentally, you can see with the spiritual eye. That's what we're fighting. That's what we're up against. That's what we're dealing with. But you have to raise yourself up to the awareness of that. And the powers that be, whether you want to call it whatever you need to get you through the day, the powers that be, called the devil, Satan, demons, whatever you need to make you feel good, that adverse force that you're up against knows this, and they know what to put out there, subconsciously and consciously, to have an effect on you. So this is what we're dealing with. We're living in a day and time where we're seeing the signs, and we have to be aware and make preparations. That's why I've said in some of my previous sessions or lectures, if you can't take the information and apply it, it's not a practical solution. And that's why I said, with all the things that are going on in the conscious community, it's great to dialogue, debate, and get together and slug it out. But my question is, at the end of the day, what point does it serve? Other than the fact that one individual walks away with a big-ass ego, oh, my knowledge was deeper than yours, I'm the winner. You understand? That was the point that I was posing. And we always have to get together as family and dialogue and build and discuss, because that's how we learn and grow. There's no doubt about that. What I'm saying is, let's not turn this into buffoonery, because then it becomes, from making people aware and uniting the family, to becoming egotistical. And unfortunately, that's what goes on. So the day and time that we're living in, and this spiritual mental warfare that we're fighting, We have to be aware of it. And how do we change with these change of times? Well, you can see, quite simple, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see it. You can see for yourself on a daily basis, whether it's through the news, whether it's through looking out your front window, whether it's through with your interaction every day with people, you sense and feel a different energy if you're spiritually in tune. You can naturally tap in to certain people's vibes. Like we like to say when we walk into a place, yeah, the vibe was powerful, or that was a positive vibe. Or you might walk into a room out of nowhere, and even though you might just walk into that room with a group of people, you might all of a sudden tap into a negative vibe and say, man, so I walked in here, but it feels negative. So we have that ability to tap into vibrations, tones, and frequencies. Now, what I'm saying is on a natural and a regular daily basis, you can walk into a grocery store now and sense energy around you. Your everyday travels back and forth in and out of your house. There's a certain energy in the air that those that are spiritually in tune can now, no matter where they are and what they're doing, can automatically, spiritually, mentally, and emotionally adapt to their environment. That's how you know the change or the quickening of the soul, as mentioned in the Emerald Tablets, or the transformation process has now started to begin. Because you've spiritually tuned yourself in to this awareness. Now, the downside for those that haven't are what we're labeling, and I hate to use that term loosely, the crazies, or the people that have fallen prey and victim because they haven't spiritually, mentally, or emotionally prepared yourself. And we're seeing the effects of this on a daily basis in the news. Now, what we fail to understand, the cataclysmic aspects of the weather changes that's going on. Now, yes, we can get into the Heart Project. We can get into ELF, extreme low frequencies. We know they have weather machines and they're able to artificially change and alter the weather. We know about the chemtrails. We know how they can have an effect on nature artificially. But also, in tune, we have to realize the energy that we're outputting also affects the planet and can alter the weather. That's a scientific fact. We have a central nervous system, which is the key element that exists within our physical makeup that connects us to the spiritual messages and impulses that the universe sends out. That is ingested through our central nervous system. We can't receive those messages if the central nervous system isn't functioning properly. So they know that. So they can work on us through the central nervous system and stress us out to the point, well, what do they say when that breaks down? You had a what? A nervous breakdown. So they know they have to attack you from a spiritual level. So when we're living in a day and time where, though there may not be physical slavery, it is mental slavery being propagated on us subconsciously to control us, whether we're aware of it or not. So we have to be aware of that fact. We have to be conscious of that fact. Because if we're not, then we are again our open vessel to be used as a puppet in this game called life. Because like I said before, the more you listen, you'll understand what I mean by either say you're either part of the experiment or you're controlling the experiment. People don't understand what that is. Because people that don't understand what that is are gravitating on the physical level. They're looking at everything from a physical aspect. Those that gravitate and move on the spiritual know, as the doctrine of correspondences state, as above, so below. You got to meditate on that to really come to the realization of what does that really mean. Okay? So, in these days and times, we have to have now practical solutions. And that's why I said in the previous sessions, where are we going? How did we get here? And what is our purpose? First of all, we have to understand ourselves. Do you really know who and what you are? Ask yourself that question. I want to rephrase it. I'm not asking you what you think you are. Okay? There's a lot of people like to create a persona about themselves of what they think they are, because they choose something that they like and gravitate towards. So it could be a culture in Egypt, or a certain deity, or any certain culture that they gravitate, and they like to stamp themselves and portray an image, and that's what they want themselves to be. Because there's who you want to be, and then there's who you really are. And who you really are is the one that's going to manifest regardless. And what I mean by that is, as nature is changing, we're all realigning into who we are by our DNA. Let's establish that. We're all realigning to who and what we are by our DNA. So you can have a vision of yourself that you are, because you read somewhere in a book, you're a direct descendant of the ancient Egyptians. And again, we have a lot of cats running around saying that they direct descendants of the ancient Egyptians, and they have lineage from West Africa and Nigerian and Yoruba roots. So their direct descendancy would be from that part of Africa. That's why I said, when you say your African ancestors, what part of Africa are we talking about? Because Africa is a big place. Because some people say Africa, but they're identifying with one aspect. So we're aligning naturally, whether we're aware of it or not, to who and what we are by our DNA and our RNA. Now here's the sad part. Some people are demons and they don't even know it, what we term demons. So if you don't recognize that fact and are knowledgeable of that fact, then you can't repair and correct the DNA. Because what's tending to happen is those that aren't prepared, as they are bombarded with that spiritual energy, they become controlled by these adverse forces. Okay? So do you really know who you are? Now, what's really standing in front of you when you look at what we're terming a human being? Now, we know for years there's been extraterrestrial involvement on our planet for millions of years. We know when we go into the Bible, the whole mining of the gold mines for gold. We know extraterrestrials have been coming back and forth here for millions of years and have affected our DNA, our evolution, not only as physical beings, but spiritually, mentally, and emotional beings. Okay, we know they're shapeshifters. We know they can change appearance at any time. They can appear to be black, Latino, Asian, Caucasian. What is it that's standing in front of you? Well, a key element to understanding who and what you are is your blood type. I always refer to this when the topic of diet comes up. And I don't want to get too much into that right now because that's a touchy subject. Apparently, some fools think that if everybody became a vegetarian, that would be the correct diet for everybody on the planet. Sorry to bust your bubble, not true. Some people, especially people with O positive blood, have to be what we call carnivorous beings. They have to eat some form of meat. And again, I don't want what I'm saying to be misquoted or mistranslated. I'm not saying gorge on eating meat. I am saying that each blood type has its own dietary laws that they need to follow. Because some people that have to have a certain level of protein and do become vegetarians become very sick and imbalanced because they're not ingesting high levels of protein, for an example, such as O positive and O negative people with blood types need. Some people are naturally, by nature and DNA, herbivorous people that can be plant-eating vegetable people because their DNA is conducive to it. But not everybody can be on a fruit, nut, and vegetable diet because that's not for everybody. So you are who you are by your blood type. Now the question that arises with that is, O positive being the most dominant blood amongst Africans and Nubian people, A blood being more Caucasian blood. Your blood type will dictate to you. It doesn't mean if you're black and you have A positive blood, you're Caucasian. What it does mean is that your DNA is dominated more by Caucasian blood. So that tells you the type of spirits that you're working with, the type of spirits that need to be addressed in your DNA and your RNA. And your alignment process would be different per se for somebody that has O positive blood or O negative blood. Not only does that tie into spiritual realignment, but it also ties into physical realignment, such as diet. Okay, so who and what you are plays a key role in understanding where you are in the spiritual evolution and where you're going. And that's why I said on the last session, do you really know where you're headed? So I said don't get caught up in the emotional thing of the race aspect. Because all people that belong to the Nubian family, people of colors, from the lightest to light, we have people with straight to wavy hair, alkaline features, thin lips, to people yellow skin tone, brown skin with natural hair or kingly hair, broad lips, broad nose, or thick lips, broad nose, dark skin. Now, in that broad range of color and DNA, regardless, the blood type still determines. So, you can have somebody with alkaline features, part of our Nubian family, say that's Latino, or any of the subcultures, that has the physical appearance that looks more Caucasian, but might have O positive blood and more in tune with the ancestors per se than somebody that might be dark skinned with kingly or woolly hair, and they may not be as in tune because we're looking at the physical perception like, oh, that brother's or that sister's dark skinned, that one's light skinned. So instantly, based on physical perception, we might say that one's more Caucasian because they look Caucasian, and that one is more black because they look black. But by blood, the darker skinned one could be a demon, more so than the lighter skinned one. Now, there's plenty of light skinned or white demons or fair skinned demons, or whatever you want to call it, but there's just as many dealing with the spectrum now. And I'm bringing that up because there's illusion in that, and I myself have sat many times, played drums with many varying degrees of people, and I've watched the blackest of black brother get on the drums and have no rhythm. What creates that disconnect? Because automatically we think that certain individuals are supposed to have rhythm based on what we physically perceive them. Now we know, especially amongst the Santeria Yoruba community, there's many Latinos that can play the drums naturally because it's part of that culture. But like I'm saying is, don't be deceived by what you're seeing with these two eyes, because that shit can fool you real quick. And one thing I tend to notice, and it kind of trips me out, and it's kind of funny to me. I notice a lot of these brothers in the Kemetic community that are very light-skinned or mixed, such as myself, and I don't put myself in this category, but unfortunately I see a lot of these light-skinned brothers have to profess their blackness all the time. I find that shit funny because it shows me that subconsciously they're wrestling with a personal issue with themselves. And I notice, if you pay close attention, it's always the very light-skinned people that talk all that black, pro-black shit. You know, the white man this, the devil that, black this, cracker this, devil that. It's like they feel the need to validate their blackness. To me, subconsciously, that's a sickness that they're still struggling with themselves. And again, this all ties into, so who and what are we really? And to me, that's comical, because if you have to constantly stress something, whether it's that or anything else, then it's confirmation that you're not secure or confident in that information. Okay? So we know with the interbreeding of various different extraterrestrial beings that have been coming here for years, some of us are reptilian beings. Some of us are beings of the sky from various different constellations and planets. And again, I don't want to get into that. We'll do a show on extraterrestrial involvement in nature and creation. But I want to just shortly and briefly bring up the point. We've interbred with many of these different species from the water, from the skies, and from different planets. Okay? We know, for an example, and again, I don't want to come from no Hollywood fictitious spooky bullshit, but we know, for an example, if you go to the Dogons in Mali, West Africa, we know it's recorded in their history, and there's physical evidence there to this day that water reptilian beings came out of the waters, came to the surface, and made a pact with the people in Maui that if they can breed sexually with their women, they would exchange with those people the mysteries and knowledge of the universe, creating what we call today in Maui the ostrich people. They have the webbed feet. They have a lot of reptilian characteristics. And every 60 years, to reenact this event, they hold what they call a sigi under the Baldo rites. That's a fact, commemorating their contact with these beings from the water. Now, we know that there's beings that live beneath the surface, and we know there's beings that live out of our atmosphere, as crazy as that shit may sound. Now, you have to be careful when you talk to people about stuff like this, because they've already been programmed and it's already been stamped in their mind. When they hear the word extraterrestrial, they think of monsters and Hollywood and movies. When I'm saying extraterrestrials, I'm talking about beings that look just like you and me. You that are watching this right now, get that stamped in your subconscious. That's how they actually can appear and look, especially shapeshifters. So get that Hollywood illusion out of your mind when you hear extraterrestrials or life forms from other planets. Okay? Now, when dealing with that extraterrestrial involvement, I always get this. Okay, and there's a good book I want to just throw up there to show people. I hope y'all can see this. This is a really good book. It's called The Extraterrestrial Answer Book, UFO Alien Abductions and the Coming ET Presence. Okay? And speaking on that, another good book too, because that's all I do is read, and I'm sure everybody else reads. Mars, The Living Planet. I mean, I can give you a bunch of them. Time, Quickening of the Soul. The Chaos Point, where we're at now from 2012 moving on. I mean, the list goes on and on. And if you will be at the event this Sunday, which, by the way, we will stream live on YouTube, a lot of this information and books will be available. But speaking of extraterrestrial involvement, this is a question I get quite frequently in a lot of classes I do. When these extraterrestrials come, people always ask the question, how come they only appear, or let me say this, not only appear, how come the levels of recorded abductions vary when it comes to blacks, Latinos, and Caucasians? Alright, so let's look at and analyze this. We know, for an example, in Mexico, and Puerto Rico, and Central America, there's a high level of extraterrestrial and UFO involvement. We know this. We know it's recorded by way of the crop circles. We know it's recorded in the many different cultures of the Aztecs and the Mayans. We know it's recorded in many different parts of Africa, especially South Africa, high extraterrestrial involvement there, North Africa and Ethiopia. Okay? But when you see extraterrestrial presence and involvement there, it's more of an intermingling with the culture that exists. It's more of coming to send a message or establish in the past a certain civilization or culture and link up a direct link or descendancy to what we know as these people or cultures. Now, that presence varies when the extraterrestrial involvement with Caucasians is involved. Caucasians seemed always, for the most part, their experience with extraterrestrial involvement always leads to abduction and experiment. Okay, now pay attention. And to prove what I'm saying is true, you have very minimal recording in history of blacks or Africans being abducted and experimented on. I'm not saying it's never happened. I'm saying it's on such a low varying degree. Usually, blacks or Africans or Nubians that have experiences with extraterrestrials, they're usually used as vessels or messengers. That's what I'm saying. The difference is the meshing in of the culture and the experience as opposed to being a goddamn science project. Caucasians seem all through history to always be part of an abduction and an experiment. The reason why, if you really just use common sense, you will see that these beings are not going to experiment on something that they are. And I hope you caught that. If they are of you and they are of your blood and DNA, they don't need to cut your ass open and experiment on you because they're looking at them and you're looking at them and it's one and the same. But when they see this mutated graftation Caucasian, they're not familiar with how we've evolved. You following what I'm saying? Or what's evolved out of our DNA has become so mutated and modified that they cut it open and experiment with it because it's different from what there are. So that's why Caucasians have a different experience with extraterrestrials, and Africans or blacks or Latinos or people of the Nubian family have their different experiences with it. Okay, and that's why I said on a previous class, what was the purpose, okay, of the original black god or original man creating the white man or the devil? I said that because if you were digging back deeper into our evolution, you would genetically be able to explain how it's evolved to what it's become today. What we're not factoring is the extraterrestrial involvement in that modification or mutation. That's what I was trying to get people to see. Because then you'll have an understanding that what you're actually looking at is a lesser varying degree of you. Now, again, I don't want to hear all those bullshit stories and those whacked out philosophies of how the Nation of Islam or the Nuwapians or the black Hebrew Israelites feel the Caucasian came about, because that shit cannot be scientifically proven. What I'm trying to say is there is no such thing as that God or devil concept. It's self-created by humans. We created that concept, that there's a God, and that there's a devil, and that there's good, and that there's bad, and then there's a supreme and original, and then there's a lesser original, but yet there's a separation there, because what I was trying to get people to see on the last class, and even when I do classes that people get confused, you can't recruit me for some being or force that you're saying is the right way to follow to fight this adversary called the devil, that same force or deity or God was responsible for creating. That's an oxy-fucking-moron. Shit don't make no sense. That was my point, because we weren't factoring in, or most people don't factor in, extraterrestrial involvement. So really, in essence, when you get to the core of it, it ain't got nothing to do with black and white. That shit is irrelevant. We see through the genetic modification how the varying degrees of melanin through mutation increased and decreased. Okay? Because bottom line is this, when we get to the core and the essence of it, nobody's really black. The actual divine color, as we know, depicted back in ancient Egypt, when you look on the walls of ancient Egypt, and you see, for an example, Osiris or Osir depicted with green skin, you simply ask yourself, why were a lot of these deities depicted green? And I'll quote, per se, many great teachers over the history of time, Phil Valentine being one of them, Dr. Ben, have explained many times that originally, before the elements of this planet, the zinc, the magnesium, and the copper, when we were exposed to this, when we came here, our skin turned from the divine green color that we see depicted on the walls of the pyramid to this brown, rust, to yellow, to high yellow color due to the oxidation of ingesting all these minerals. So really, in essence, the black and white thing is mute. You can get into the black man and the white man garbage, but when you take it back to the essence and you interject that extraterrestrial involvement, and you go pre-Bible, pre-Egypt, and I want to stress this, like I said before, the reason why we call this Mother Nubia, because we know Nubia is the correct mother of ancient Egypt. We know there's civilizations, whether you want to accept it or not, that predate what we're calling Egypt, even the pre-dynastic Egyptians, because you have to go back during the time along what we call the Nile today to what they call the Neolithics, or the Pygmies, or the Watusis. We know these bands were the bands that these Egyptian cultures and civilization evolved out of. And this is prior to the pre-dynastic Egyptians. We could even take it a step further. If you study the mysteries of what we're calling Atlantis today, you will find out that these cultures and civilizations were influenced and educated by the bands of what we call Mu and Atlantis. And then the question arises, who were the beings from Mu and Atlantis? Because now we're getting digger and indulging deeper in extraterrestrial involvement. So we got to take it back pre-dynastic, prior to Egypt, before there was any pyramids even established, before there were any pyramids even built, before there was anything we can even label as what we call Egyptian culture. So that's why I said all that God and devil shit is garbage. It holds no substance. And if a lot of people didn't have that to talk about, they would have nothing to dialogue about. That's a fact. You can't tell me otherwise, because most of these conscious fools can't hold a conversation without talking about the devil and the white man. Okay. But bottom line is, what's the fucking point? That's all I'm saying. I just want to know the point. Where are you going with it? If in this day and time you're not making people aware and providing solutions and practical means for them to cure some of these problems, then you're part of the problem. That's it. And if you can't realize that in this day and time, then you're stupid. And like I said, with this new shift in consciousness, the days are over of people trying to fool people, or individuals that come and pretend like they got a lock on the truth and they're the only ones that know something. It's a bunch of bullshit. And if you're still falling for the Mickey Mouse Club routine, then however you get abused and used, you kind of deserve that shit. Because these bands that come, they're vicious. And they don't have no compassion, and they have no mercy. And you're dealing with beings that have no emotion. They don't have emotions like you have emotions. They don't vibrate on the frequency that you vibrate on. They don't have pity. You understand? They don't feel remorse. They have a job in mind that needs to be accomplished, and they accomplish that job by whatever means. It's the same thing when you go back into your Bible story. The beings that were coming here, mining the mines for the gold, were looking for that gold element because, again, they knew the healing properties in that gold. We're not going to get into that today, the monatomic power, the elixir of life, the healing properties of the gold. They've been coming here back and forth, and they went to all means to create a whole doctrine and a dogma called religion to control your ass so they can keep you a slave and have you doing the work for them and using you as that puppet or that tool, that vessel to carry out their mission. And they'll go to whatever means, even death and violence and bloodshed, to accomplish what they need to accomplish. The God of your Bible, or the Yahweh of your Bible, when we do the research and we go back and study the Sumerian culture, is who we're calling Enlil, the Brotherhood of Gold. These were the people that got together, or the beings that got together, and devised a plan for the strict worship exclusively of this God of the Bible. And that's why it says stupid things in there like God is a jealous God. How can God be jealous? How can the supreme creator of the universe feel the emotion of jealousy? Did anybody ever stop and think about that stupid shit? How can the God of Exodus make a comment, I am the Lord thy God, have no other gods before me? Which is confessing and admitting that there are other gods out there that are equal in power to this deity. Okay? That's a fact. We don't stop and we don't look at things like that. So we see, if I am the supreme creator of the boundless universes, I fear nothing and no one. I don't worry about anything because there's no competition out there that can compete with my power. But apparently, this God of the Bible had to constantly make threats to his people and threaten them with death and fire and brimstone and horrid destruction if they didn't obey. So they were practicing the art of fear back then, and they're still practicing it today, because guess what they tell you if you're not saved or you don't become a Christian? You're going to go to this place, hell. You're going to burn eternally in this place called hell. But these fucking clowns can never prove to you the existence of a heaven or a hell. They have no way of confirming it for you. They can't prove the shit. All they can do is go into their Bible. And all you have to simply tell them is, close that Bible, close that Quran, and prove to me that heaven and hell exist without using the Bible or the Quran. Give me the origin or the root that the word heaven and hell comes from. We know the word heaven comes from the Greek word haven, which is a place of hiding and enclosure. Just go look at it. Just go look it up. That's all you're saying when you're saying heaven. Okay? We know Hades, which is another Greek word in the New Testament you'll see for hell, means somewhere down there or below. That's it. And these were terms that were grafted by the fictitious authors that created the fiction, the men that penned this Bible. They created these concepts of heaven and hell, and then they pass it down through generation after generation. But the bottom line is, nobody can confirm the factual concept that these places really exist. Okay? This is what keeps us under the illusion. So the art of fear and ignorance, which was the disease or the trick and the tool that was used way back then, is still being used on people today. Creating what we call your modern day religious fanatics, your Jesus freaks, your radical Muslims, because they're so radical to the point that they fear so much that they react and retaliate in such a physical and aggressive way. Because they become so fanatical to the point that they believe that if they don't follow everything to the letter, to the point, as seriously extreme it might seem, in their eyes they feel that this needs to be done so they can avoid going to this place called hell. Let me explain something to you. You got to be a crazy fuck to think that if you strap a bomb to yourself and you go into some place and ignite it and kill yourself, and you really believe that you're some great martyr and you're going to paradise. Do you know the sickness and the fucking mentality you got to have and how crazy you are? That's what some of these radical Muslims believe. Sad to say. That is the stupidity level and the ignorance of religion. And this is what it teaches. Now, the key for that being instituted was to keep the masses ignorant to what was really going on. But again, I don't want to get too much into that. I more wanted to focus on, do you really know who and what you are? Do you really know the day and time that you live in? Are you aware of the signs that are going on around you on a daily basis? Are you conscious of what's going on in nature and your place in it? Because nature, regardless of what religion, what culture, philosophy, dogma, or doctrine you believe or accept, nature dictates what's going to happen to us and what's going to happen to the planet. And like I said before, Mother Earth is a living entity, and just like when the human body gets sick, it has to rid itself of all its impurities. So you're watching Mother Earth rid itself of all the negative energies and impurities that's plaguing it, including human beings. So we're bringing about these changes by the energy that we're emitting. And like I said earlier, our vibration and energy affects this planet in a good way and a positive way. If we're constantly walking around negative all the time or carrying out negative acts which create negative energy or varying degrees of existence, it has an effect on the planet and nature. That in itself can alter the weather, in addition to these demons using weather machines and the HART project and all other means that they have to alter it artificially. So you got to look at the big picture. You got to look at the whole perspective. You can't look at this from a minute mindset or a minute mind point. I'm going to stop there. I will try regularly to post. We're going to be talking about everything on here. We're going to be talking about extraterrestrial involvement in our DNA, quantum and metaphysics. We're going to be talking about the 7 Hermetic principles of ancient Egypt. Any topic you can think of, we're going to talk about. And if there is a topic you might be interested in talking about, send an email to khnum19@gmail.com, and we'll be more than happy to do that. Again, I wanted to plug in before we go, a couple quick announcements. I wanted to plug in. Let me pull it up. I'm sorry. So much on the mind that I can't remember the address of these places. So let me pull it up. Just bear with me 1 second. Let's pull this up real quick. Hold on. If you are in, and you don't have to be in, I'm just saying more convenient, if you are in the South Florida area, and when I say South Florida area, I'm referring to Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, Miami. I will be at Sophia's Garden of Ma'at this Sunday, February 8th, from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. The address of that is 3450 Northwest 169th Terrace, Miami Gardens, Florida 33056. If you have any questions about the event information, you can call Brother Yahuda at 786-357-1899. Again, that's Brother Yahuda at 786-357-1899. The event is free. There's no admission to get in. It's free to get in. All we ask is support the vendors that will be there. There will be many books, incense, oils, DVDs, lectures of various different teachers on DVD. There will be natural organic food prepared by Sister Sophia, who does a great job of doing that. There'll be a whole bunch of stuff there. So all we ask is, there's no admission to get in the event. We just ask to support, show some support. And one thing that pisses me off, and it kind of irritates me in the conscious community, people want shit for free all the time. And again, people that have known me for the 20 plus years know I never charge a damn dime for anything. We pretty much, for years, offer our services for free. All we say is have some common sense and support. That's it, because all the brothers and sisters that are involved in putting these events and functions together, most of them do it out of their own free time, and it's a lot of sacrifice. And again, I don't like to be preachy and lecture, but a lot of people sometimes don't understand the amount of time and energy that people put into a lot of these events, and you can show your appreciation simply by supporting. It's that simple. Ain't shit free, not even the damn air you breathe. But unfortunately, sometimes this attracts bums and lowlifes because it's another place for them to hide and hustle. And that's just the reality. Don't take the shit personal. So simply support, and and that all works itself out. So we'll be there this Sunday. Also, we are gonna stream this event live on YouTube. We will upload it. We will send the link out, and if you wanna participate in that, again, hit me up at khnum19@gmail.com. We can put you on the list and send you the link so you can tune in live, and it'll be nice because you'll be able to ask questions. If you're tuning in online, we'll have a facilitator who will be working the computer, and we'll take the questions online, and you'll be able to interact with the live audience. I think that'll be pretty cool. So that'll be in place. Also, we'll be on the air this Thursday night on TalkShoe.com. Awakening Universal Minds. You can go to TalkShoe.com, go to the search engine at the top, type in AUM, it'll come right up. We'll be on the air this Thursday night from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. If you want to be on the list to permanently get update, to get a link every time the show is about to air, you can again email me at khnum19@gmail.com, and we will put you on the list to get a link for the show. We do the show every other Thursday, so hopefully if you're watching this before this Thursday, tune into the show. Also want to plug in my good brother, the Dry Bones Connection on Blog Talk Radio. Brother has a phenomenal show, great topics, and again another classic example of an individual that devotes their time and energy in conjunction with trying to make a living and taking care of family, but puts a lot of time and energy to put a great show together twice a week for people. That's a lot of work. People don't realize it's not easy to do this twice a week and put together a 2-hour show like this brother does. He's on Blog Talk Radio. You can go to the search engine and type in the Dry Bones Connection. It'll come right up. If you want more information or you want to contact the brother, you can contact the brother at drybones7@hotmail.com. He can send you links and information on the show. So again, it's about support. So that's all we're saying. That's pretty much all I got for now. I will try to consistently. We want to build this up. We want to put as many topics on here we can discuss. But remember, this is about making people aware, giving information that you can apply that's practical. It's not about bullshit. It's not about getting up here sounding heavy and deep, or getting up here claiming I know more than anybody else. That's all game. Them days is over. The jig is up. And if you ain't ready for it, get the fuck out the way. That's all I'm trying to say. If you're not ready for it, just get out of the way. Let the big boys handle this. You're going to see a lot of people emerging now in this day and time that may have been in the background for many years. You may not have seen their face. You may not recognize them, but they've been sitting in the cut, watching and waiting for the correct time to come forward to make their presence known. That's the day and time that we live in. Be careful who you talk to, because you may not really know who and what you're talking to. So let's wake up. Let's come together as family and dialogue, and let's build, and let's come up with solutions moving forward. So in this next cycle of transformation, we're in control and we can make this a better planet. Okay, so signing out, Hotep. It's your good brother, Baniti Amun Ray. Peace.